Okay, strap in because I'm going to tell you how I made $81,000 in 10 days. $81,000. Now, this isn't Bitcoin, this isn't clickbait, this isn't multi-level marketing, this is real. This is tax-free, $81,000 in 10 days. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. So when I was young, I never even realized that money was just an idea. And someone told me that once, that money is just an idea. And I said, what does that actually mean? You know, money is a thing that you have to work for every hour of the day. That's what I understood. And when I went to university, I started to hang around people that were in a different socio-economic environment to my own, a lot better than my own, which wasn't very difficult. And in the holidays, I would do a few things. And one of the things that I had to do was I had to drive an executive to work who had lost his license for whatever reason, you know, going too fast, drinking too much, I don't really know what it was. But he had a company car and it was a 1983 Honda Prelude when I was a kid. And I'd never driven anything new before that. Our cars were all just old junky sort of things, you know, old Holdens or Fords or Gallants or just rubbish, complete rubbish by comparison. And when I was growing up, I had a Volkswagen Beetle that I used to drive to university, and I kind of thought that was cool, but I had no idea because I didn't have anything to compare it to. So I get in this 1983 Honda Prelude, and the lights went up, and it was before the four-wheel steer model, which was incredible. But I'm just driving along in this thing, and I'm going, how good is this? I didn't even realize stuff this good was out there. And that was a Honda. Imagine a Mercedes or a Ferrari or something. So that was the first thing when I was 17 or 18 that piqued my interest in, hey, there's some possibilities out there. Second one was when I was at university in my last year, so I was 20 years old. A friend of mine and a few others had to do a project in the city of Brisbane. And in the city, completely different world to where I lived out in the sticks in Jimboomba. I lived out in the country on tank water, and I'd drive into university every day in my crappy $600 Volkswagen Beetle, which I thought was really good at the time. What we did is we had to meet in town, and the friend who lived near the city said, hey, why don't we, after we have the interviews with the people we need to see for this assignment, why don't we go over to my house and we'll put our heads together and get our notes down and do a draft. I said, yep, great, sounds good. So what we did is we went to his house in a place in Brisbane called Hamilton. And if you don't know Brisbane, Hamilton is probably one of the most expensive suburbs of Brisbane. Set high on a hill, it was a beautiful old Queenslander mansion, probably built in the 1890s. And I'm just driving up to this place thinking, I've never seen anything like this, because I was completely oblivious to that. And I was brought up to think that old Queenslanders were just old drafty houses that poor people lived in, that needed paint all the time and were falling down and in flood areas. How wrong I was there. So we drive up to this place, pull into the driveway, and it's not a driveway, it's a car court. So it's a court that you drive your vehicles into. And there's a BMW, a Jaguar, and my friend's car, which was a Ford Laser. And he was like 20, 21 years old. And he never came across as flashy at all. He always had to go home and help his family with chores. And so he knew the value of work, but we never knew that he was from a family of this type of means. So we walked into his room through the huge house, and he took off his coat, his suit jacket, and he hung it in his wardrobe, and it was one of those big sliding door wardrobes. And he opened the door, and I counted while he was talking to me about a dozen of these impeccably made suits that probably would have cost about $3,000 each in 1987, 1988. And this was a 20-year-old who had this. And I'm just going, I've never seen anything like this. And so I didn't say anything, but I'm just thinking this. I'm going, what is this world that I've never been involved with before? Because everyone I knew were broke. They were poor, right? Or they were in a lot of debt. So, and I hadn't even thought of it. I just thought, yeah, I'll just truck along in life and struggle from pay to pay, and that's how life will be. So we walked downstairs into an area with an indoor putting green and a stage for bands to play. And this is in his house, right? So I'm just taking all of this in, going, this is incredible. And the house, of course, had grounds. It had a tennis court. And I thought, I would love to have something not exactly like this one day, but even a fraction of this, I would be so over the moon if I had something like that. So that set the scene for me wanting a little bit more financial success than I had initially thought myself to have. So fast forward 2003. 2003, as you know, we've got a son who has autism, and he was about 7 or 8 then, and his behavior was getting more and more difficult to manage. Difficult to manage for the people who were running the special school that he went to, difficult to manage for us as well. I heard from friends of friends that there was a particular school that dealt with people with autism in Tasmania, and I said, right, we're taking a chance, we're selling all of the stuff that we've got, and we're moving to Tasmania. Kind of like the Beverly Hillbillies packing up their truck and moving to Beverly, except we weren't moving to Beverly, we were moving to Tasmania. So what I did is I kept an eye on real estate, and because I was in real estate at the time in Ipswich, and so I knew how to appraise a house. I knew to look at something that had value and something that I could add to it. So what I did is that I traveled down to Tasmania when our house was unconditional, so there were no more conditions on the sale of our house. Flew down there, looked at one particular house. We'd missed out on a few others, so I didn't want to miss this one. Looked at it for about 10 minutes and established that this was good value. Bought it and came back and made plans to move down within, I think, 6 weeks. So really exciting stuff. So this set the scene for how I made $81,000 in 10 days. For anything to occur like this, a few things have to happen. I wish I could do this every month, because I would. But a few things had to happen, and it was really unusual times. Every house on earth pretty much went up dramatically after the September 11 attacks in New York City in 2001. I was selling houses at the time, and it was almost like someone turned on a tap of demand of people who wanted to stay at home, and their house was their castle. So what I did is I saw that there were a few things that were happening. I read a book by a fellow called Dolph DeRoos, and his book was called Real Estate Riches. And 4 things had to happen for me to make this money. What happened? There was a rising market, number 1. Number 2, the demand was high because of that rising market. People were frantic on buying a house everywhere, including Tasmania. Not as frantic as, Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne, but they've got a lot fewer people down there. So even a small surge in the market down there would create a huge rise in demand. The third thing is that I bought something that was a little undervalued. See where I'm going with this? I bought something that was undervalued because it was a deceased estate, and a lot of people they don't have the foresight on how to fix something or make it look better. They just want everything done for them. So I had a skill set. The fourth thing was to have a skill set that you can do for wholesale at retail rates. So if you're an electrician, for example, and you buy something that needs electrical work and the retail value of that might be $40,000, and you can do it for $2,000 with your own labor and $2,000 worth of, wires, you're a long way in front. So my skill set for turning things around from wholesale to retail was I can make things look better. I'm a bit of a handyman, and I'd been in probably about 3,000 to 4,000 houses at that point. So I could see what people wanted to buy. And so we moved down there, and within hours of getting down there, I had someone come up to me who lived in the street. Thankfully, people in Tasmania are really friendly. He welcomed me to the street, and I saw that he had a big truck pulled up out the front. And I said, hey, I see that you're not doing anything today. Would you like to utilize that truck? Because I'm going to be pulling out a lot of bushes in front of this house. And he said, yeah, absolutely. So this house, as I said, was a deceased estate, and it was covered or surrounded at the front by vegetation. And I bought a brush hook, which is basically a big sickle on the end of a stick, lots of pruning saws, that sort of thing. And I cut down everything out the front of that house within reason and made it look really pretty. And I did that within a day and a half. We also had a dog at the time, and I wanted that dog to be within the property boundaries. I didn't want him to run away. So you guessed it, I built a fence. And not just any fence. I had a book with me, and the book was of facades of Victorian era homes. And the home that I bought was a Victorian era home, 1876. And so this book that I had, I copied the fence of a house in Camberwell, which is a really ritzy suburb of Melbourne, and the gates, and that house was called Norway. And so I still remember it to this day. So I had that fence in the ground, painted, looking good, with a gate on it, in about 7 days. So we're at about a day and a half, 7 days. We're at 8.5 days now. What I did then is I had $106,000 in the bank. So I bought this house. The mortgage on it was the matter of a few coffees a week. It was not very high. Okay, but I wanted to keep enough money for me to do things to this house and to have a bit of a life as well, to have a bit of savings, because you've always got to have a bit of backup and savings in your account. And so what I did is I wanted to buy a newer car because I wanted to get into real estate in Tasmania. I had a job lined up, and I called the bank and had them revalue the house after like 7.5 days of being in there. They sent somebody by. They didn't even need to come in. This house was looking so good that people were stopping while I was doing the fence and doing the front of the house. And they were saying to me, we didn't even know that this house was behind here, and it looks fantastic. Good job. So I said, yep, absolutely. Keep on watching, because I'm going to be doing a lot more. So what happened after that is the valuation came in at, you guessed it, $81,000 more than I paid for the property a few months back. So, it takes a while to buy the property, then for it to settle, and then we got there, and then 10 days after we got there, I got that valuation. They did a drive-by valuation, that they were that confident that the market was rising, that it looked that good, and it was on that size of block, that the valuation came in at $81,000 more. So what I did is I bought a new car, and that car, I just added it to our mortgage, which was, as I said, a few coffees a week. It was like $70 or something a week, this mortgage. And they added the cost of the car, and they amortized it over 25 years or whatever it was. and I got a brand new Subaru Outback 6-cylinder, and it was just added to the loan. And I knew that I was going to sell this house within a few years. And so what happened is I kept that $106,000 in the bank. I got a new car for $50 a week instead of, $300 a week. And the house went up in value, and it kept going up in value. I sold it probably 2 years after that and made probably the largest profit that I've ever made on any property that I've done. So what are the key takeaways from this? Well, money is an idea. Can you imagine how long it would take you to save $81,000? Okay? And that was tax-free as well, because it was my own house. And when I sold that house, we took out the cost of the car, and we did a little bit of stuff on that house, not a lot. I probably spent $10,000 on that house and made so much money that set up the rest of my life. And every time I do a house, it sets us up for the rest of our life. So money is an idea. How long would it take to save that $81,000? Years, okay? And this was in 2003, remember. So, if you put that in today's dollars, it would be a lot more than $81,000, probably more like $150,000. So it was a really big deal at the time. I improved a flawed asset, and you have to remember that in life. Look out for opportunities. When I walk up the street, I just see opportunities everywhere. I see a house that has a falling down fence and grass that's this long. And I thought, if you could just buy that and make it look pretty again, it would be worth so much more, but people just can't be bothered. And there is a whole thing in life about being bothered. Everyone says, I can't be bothered. Those who are bothered reap the rewards, definitely. And the really key takeaway for this in closing is that the conditions have to be right. Remember those conditions that we had? A rising market, high demand. We bought something that was undervalued, and we did something that our own skills could change from a wholesale to retail profit margin. And my skills were that I'm pretty good at making things look nice, okay, and pleasing to the eye and functional. After looking through 3,000 to 4,000 houses, I knew what people were looking for. So there we go. There was no trick to that. There was no clickbait. On paper, I made $81,000 tax-free in 10 days. And if I sold it 10 days later, I would have made $81,000 minus costs. But I kept it and made way more than $81,000 and costs. So there you go. So if you like this sort of thing, please consider subscribing to this channel. See you on the next one, but I like doing this sort of stuff. Bye for now.